Hey everybody, welcome to No Plan, No Problem, the weekly D&D podcast where two Dungeon Masters go on a mythical quest to try and find some actionable tips for you to use in your next game. I am your Dungeon Master, Anto.
And I am an incredibly wealthy sorcerer, Matthew Perkins.
You can find my stuff across the internet at icarus-games.co.uk. And then, Matthew?
I messed up. I made a mistake. My name's Matthew Perkins. I'm over at matthewperkins.net. Okay. So, I've already messed up our intro, but that's fine. Today, we are talking about something to kind of build on last week's episode. We were talking about monarchies last week, and we ended on something that had a lot of juice, and we want to explore it. We were talking about the idea of how does class and a magical society and wizards and stuff, how does that interact? You know what I mean? Because I feel that that is going to be a very disruptive force in a systemic kind of thing like a monarchy and just in class in general with higher class, lower class, middle class, and all kinds of different kinds of people. So we just want to probe our minds a little bit and just see how we feel about magic and class. How's that interaction going? So the first question is from an adventurer named me. It's from me. Okay. So here's my hypothetical. I have a question for you, Anto. I want to explore this. I am a peasant, okay, out there in the world. I till the soil. I pull up the food to eat from the soil. But I live in a magical society. What is my life like in a magical society as the lowest of the low? I am a peasant. What do you think? What's my life like?
I think that what your life is like as a peasant is going to depend on a couple of things. Firstly, are you living in a world where magic is kind of subjugated, or are you living in a world where the magical people kind of form their own class?
How? Well, let me probe that a little bit and say, in default Dungeons and Dragons, do you feel it wants magic to be some kind of subjugated class, or do you feel that it wants it to be some kind of more common phenomenon?
I don't think that it makes too much prescription on kind of magic and class in the rules. I certainly think that that magic in terms like magical items are rarer in 5th edition than they probably have been in any other edition. And so I'm led to believe, by extension, magic is probably a little rarer in 5th edition than it is in other editions.
Really? I get the opposite impression. I know that magical items are rarer, but actual magic users, I feel like they're kind of everywhere. Like half because I'm thinking of classes. I suppose I'm thinking players, right? And players aren't people. They're pretty disruptive too. But the question should be, what effect do players have on class and societal structures?
But I suppose there are a lot of kind of NPCs and creatures. You have an entire cosmos filled with beings that can cast magic. So magic probably is quite common. You know, everyone will probably, most people will probably have witnessed magic being cast. Even if they don't know a magic user, they'll probably have seen its effects somewhere. Which means that it's probably not subjugated, like, globally.
Yeah, well, maybe it can go either way. There's going to be different settings, different people, but even the existence of magic. Because remember, I'm asking about the lowest of the low. Yeah, like regardless of what those people are doing, the existence of magic, is that going to be disruptive to my life? Do you think it would make me better off?
I think that if you are a peasant in a world where magic is subjugated, then you always run the risk of your productivity being misconstrued as magical. So if you have a particularly bountiful harvest, your jealous neighbor is going to be, I heard he's a sorcerer. That's how his crops have gotten so big. He's a sorcerer. Yeah. I'm going to go tell
I listened to the start of his podcast and he said he was a sorcerer.
Yeah. It would foster that kind of additional level of paranoia that people could use to put other people down. So in kind of the peasant class, there is always that risk. If you just happen to get fortunate and have really good yields, a jealous neighbor that's got nothing is going to be like, well, they're a sorcerer. They're using magic. They are outlawed I should have their crops. Drag them off to the dungeons, give me their crops.
Well, what you're actually painting there is something that I hadn't really thought of, and the idea of inequality.
Yeah.
It's not, because even in a very magical setting, not everybody is magical, right?
Yeah.
And the feats that even cantrips can perform would be life-changing for some professions. If you were working with your hands and you had mending as a cantrip, you can do that as many times as you want per day. And meanwhile, I'm over here with like my sovereign glue, being like, God damn.
If you think of things like blacksmithery, if you had mage hand, you could have your mage hand hold whatever you're hammering, and then you can two-hand hammer it. You would be much more productive. You would be much safer because you're not risking slamming your own hands, or you're not risking handling volatile chemicals or handling particularly hot things. You could mage hand your bread out the oven to stop yourself getting burns. I think that kind of injury rates would be much lower among...
They'll be way lower.
The people that couldn't afford protective equipment. Productivity will probably be higher. If you've got mage hand, you can carry that 10-pound pail of milk from the cows back up to the house, and you're not exerting yourself, so you're not eating as much food to keep as much energy, which means you can sell more of your yield per year and make more money.
Dude, I'm going to look up all the cantrips, and I just want to see which ones are going to make our life easier as a peasant. Because I think cantrips are the thing to look at.
Yeah, because you can cast them an unlimited number of times.
And that's not even considering the ones that are going to be violent. Imagine the tyranny of your neighbor being able to shoot fire.
Oh God, yeah, acid splash. Yes, you could use that destructively, but acid is a useful chemical in industrial processes. I think that regardless of how magic is perceived by kind of the state, whether it's regulated, whether there is a separate class, it would change the kind of balance of being a peasant, because if it's subjugated and you have magic, then you have an advantage. You might be able to escape your social status with a greater chance of success than someone without magic. If magic is freely practiced, then the people above you have magic. You might not even be needed. If there is a class of magic users, then a lot of the kind of things necessary to the running of society that made the peasantry what it was might not exist in that way, and peasants might not be the kind of lowest economic working class. They might just be destitute because there is no work for them because all the mages are doing it.
Yeah. And it's like, this is going to sound stupid, but it kind of ties into the idea of privilege, like an unearned advantage.
Yeah.
Why do you have the ability to do this cantrip? I suppose you can learn magic. Like if you're a wizard, you learn your magic, right? But even then, that comes down to education.
Yeah.
And suddenly, do you meet the minimum requirements to be able to get that education? It comes down to kind of thinking of scarcity, all kinds of things.
You get you brought up something interesting that I think adds another layer to it. Is you get, even within the magical using community, you would have levels of inequality, because a sorcerer is born with magic. They're going to have their magic regardless, but a wizard has to work to earn it and learn it. So even though a wizard, the highest highs of a wizard might be greater than a sorcerer, a wizard has to work harder to get to the kind of first rung of magic than a sorcerer does. And that between those two groups of people would create an imbalance, because sorcerers, it's in their blood. Why should they be able to cast magic like that without having to work hard, where I'm here at this magical university studying for years to be able to cast a cantrip?
I think that we've driven through this thicket, this magical woods, and I think we've actually arrived at kind of a tip here, because what I'm thinking is this is a good, inequality breeds good motivation. And if you can imagine salt of the earth person, a manufacturer, this is reason for them to go out and make that dark pact.
Yeah.
Like, everybody else is making way more widgets than I am, okay? So I'm going to talk to this demon.
Yeah.
So I think that inequality is a good motivation for not even necessarily a villain, but for a character, right? Yeah. To really shake them out of their complacency and get them out there doing things that make the story happen.
Yeah, I think that the tip should be you should explore the inequality that is brought into a story by the presence of magic.
Oh, I love it. So wise, so wise. I think it is time for us to roll that dice and roll for friendship.
Let's do it. So, if you are enjoying what you're watching and what you're hearing, you can support us all across the internet and be our friend. The best way to do that is just engage with us across the internet. Tell us what you think of the episodes. Follow us on the social platforms. Leave the comments. Let us know if there's anything that you want to add to the conversation, if you think we've missed anything. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can go ahead and give us those juicy 5-star reviews. They really help push us out to more people. And then we also have a Patreon where we give access to a whole bunch of exclusive content, like pre-shows where we get warmed up every week and just kind of riff off each other before the episodes, as well as a bunch of kind of additional PDF content. So we make rules for things that we talk about in the episode and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, I will also want to highlight that for our special friends over there on Patreon, those pre-shows get pretty wild.
Yeah.
Today, when we recorded one, we talked about the weather.
We did.
Not very interesting. Last week, I talked about the guy I saw in the park.
You did? Oh my God, you did?
Yeah. That was a wild situation. We're in lockdown at the moment, and I promised myself I was going to, even though I'm not catching the train home from work, I was like, that day, I'm going to go down to the park and see if he's there in that spot again. But I didn't because it was cold. Back to the weather.
That's fair.
All right. Well, hey, if you are truly a friend, please leave a comment and all that kind of stuff. Thanks for listening. But let's get back to the podcast.
Let's do this thing. So, Matt, what I want to do now for our breakout segment is I want to look at what we can steal from other media, thinking about kind of magic and its impact on class. And I think that there's actually a really good source of inspiration that exists as an entire kind of genre of fiction. And that's sci-fi, because in a lot of ways, technology presents a lot of kind of the same considerations and problems that magic would do in a fantasy setting. And I think it'd be good to look at some sci-fi properties and think about how does the technology in those settings impact the world and impact class.
Yeah, that's a fun idea. That's a fun idea. I like the idea. I've heard people say that like technology that you can't explain is magical. There's a quote around this, but whenever someone says it, I just stop listening, and that's why I don't know the quote. But it is true in the sense that technology performs the same functions as magic. Like create food and water, you've got like the that fabricator in the Fifth Element where you put in like the pill and then it comes out as a turkey dinner. You've got flying cars instead of flying carpets, all this kind of stuff. I just realized that whenever I think of sci-fi, I am by default thinking of The Fifth Element. It's such a good movie.
I mean, that is a discussion for another time, because I do not like The Fifth Element, and I feel like we could propel an entire segment arguing over The Fifth Element.
Oh, man, I actually think it's perfect. Okay, well, I don't know if we should do this. Well, there are some sci-fi properties that present technology as having propelled society into a post-scarcity world, like Star Trek, right? They want for nothing. And there's even an episode where it's in one of the 4,000 episodes, where like someone comes from the past, they unfreeze him and he's like, where's all my money? I had all this bank account. And Mr. Bald Captain, look at me making fun of someone for being bald. What a schmuck. But he's saying like, well, your money doesn't matter anymore. You don't need that kind of stuff. You don't have those needs anymore. Well, what am I going to do with my time? What am I going to do with what's my goal now? What's my purpose in life? You can do whatever you want, but I wanted to make stuff. I wanted to get stuff. And that's kind of interesting to me. Do you think post-scarcity or do you think still scarcity?
I think still scarcity. I think my favorite sci-fi stories are kind of intrinsically linked to class, and
Okay.
a lot of the stories that I enjoy seeing in sci-fi, even if I've never really realized it before, a lot of them are class-based because the technology does create that divide. A really good recent example, I think, is the TV show Altered Carbon.
Altered Carbon, is that the one where they get the thing in the neck and then they change?
So the premise is your consciousness is put onto a device called a stack that's put at the base of your neck, and it allows you to live forever, essentially. You can take that stack and put it in a different body and live in a different body. But obviously, not everyone has that. So some people can afford new bodies, some people cannot. So it creates this divide where you still have the ultra wealthy who can afford to clone their body, and they can have an infinite number of the same body. You know, they have these professional services that kind of download your data so that even if your stack gets destroyed, you've got a backup of yourself somewhere else. Whereas the lowest class, they have to get bodies that are Frankensteined together because they can't afford to get entirely whole bodies, or they have to go to backstreet dealers where they get like faulty stacks, and it kind of introduces all kinds of issues in their life, and the entire story kind of focuses around that happening around the characters.
Dude, that is a really good kind of that's a good focal point for us, a good thing to focus on. I've got 2 points about this. The first is that the reason I watched Altered Carbon is because somebody recommended The Expanse, and then I forgot the name of The Expanse and accidentally watched 2 seasons of Altered Carbon. Still haven't seen The Expanse. And the second is that kind of long-livedness, that long-living, that's a direct connection to Raise Dead and Revivify. The fact that if you have 1,000 gold, 500 gold or whatever in D&D, then you can just come back. Death is a monetary inconvenience. Whereas if you don't have that money, you are dead now. And you are gone. Goodbye.
And if you have enough money and enough skill, then death just stops becoming a problem forever, because a caster can clone themselves, make it so that they can transfer their consciousness, create entire planes of existence in which to store their clones. You know, high-level magic, even money is not a problem because you can just snap your fingers and create reality.
Yeah. I sometimes it's difficult for me to think about that kind of stuff because, like, in Australia we have socialized healthcare where no matter what, you are covered for something. Like sometimes you might have to wait a little bit in a waiting room, but essentially you're not paying much at all for anything. And so there's never going to be a case where there is some kind of condition that hits me where I am priced out of treatment. Except death. And in D&D, death is just another state of being alive. Does that make any sense? Because it's reversible.
Yeah, it's reversible, and even if you don't reverse it, in most D&D settings, once your character dies, you move to another plane of existence. There is forms of afterlife, and there are other planes where you go and you live out your astral life, your, infinite void life. So there's... And being able to have access to magic and influence, you can probably dictate to a degree where you end up. You know, if you've got a selection of outer planes that you might end up in, say you might end up in Hell or Celestia, well, it's much easier to be, the kind of person that's going to get themselves into Celestia if you don't have to worry about anything. If your magic means that you're not worrying about where your next meal comes from, if you're not worrying about all these things, and you're not disproportionately likely to end up in a life of crime because you don't have to worry about anything because you are magic. You are literally magic.
That's why you can't trust the poor. They keep stealing my bread. Get out of there. Stop stealing bread. What are you doing? It's not even that good. I hate bread. No, I like bread. I'm not going to talk crap about bread. In Altered Carbon, you said that there's so they all have this chip that's in the back of their neck, and that chip can store your personality and you can change bodies and stuff. Now, does does even the poor people, do they even have a chip and they're just not able to participate in the system fully? Or are there people that don't have a chip?
There are some people that don't have a chip. There's kind of almost like a religious cult that's kind of sprung up about people that believe that humans should only live that one life and that only one lifespan, and they don't get the chips. But for the majority of poor people, they might have the stack, but it comes down to whether they can afford the new body. And the limitation stops being death, and it is just the money for affording the new body. And if you can't afford it, they just basically end up in storage forever. So their consciousness is in this thing. If someone put it in a body, they would be alive, but because of money, a choice is being made to be like, nope, just going to put you on a shelf forever.
Yeah, wow. That is a really great allegory for life and death in D&D. That's amazing. Because, like, with Resurrection, you can come back 10,000 years later.
Yeah.
You know, they can just go, whoop, you're back. Yep. Welcome. I hope you put all your money in the bank account or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what can we pull from this? Where can we drive this towards a tip? Is there something here? I just don't know what it is.
I think that another way to look at kind of technology and magic is in how the powerful use technology. So traditionally in sci-fi, the powerful use technology to, like the surveillance state. You know, that is a common trope in sci-fi is the surveillance state, technology being used to kind of monitor people, dictate what they do, control their lives. And I think in a magical world, magic would probably be used the same kind of way. So scrying would be used to like look in on political opponents or look in on people that you suspect are dissidents. You would have various detection agents or magic items with detection on them kind of in the street and being like, right, this area, you're not allowed to be a magic user. We're going to have detection-based items everywhere. And if you're found, you're going to prison and all that kind of stuff.
You got it. This is good, because a common thing in a lot of sci-fi, most sci-fis are either going to be about utopias or dystopias. And the common trope is, the utopia we thought we're in, it's actually a dystopia.
Yeah.
Oh, wackadoos, this is crazy. And we're all meant to, blow our brains out. It's crazy. But you could do a magical dystopian society.
Yeah.
Because if you take the trappings of a dystopia and you replace all the technological elements that enforce that dystopia in the sci-fi, map them onto a magical setting with direct things like the scrying for the surveillance, with like mind control, magic kind of stuff, and Gesh, the spell, all that kind of stuff, or compelling people, or like they do mind control stuff in sci-fi, I presume. I'm just revealing that I don't know much about sci-fi, and I like the fifth element. But yeah, I reckon magical dystopia would be fun to explore.
Yeah, kind of looking for ways to think about how technology is used now and in sci-fi and replace that with magical elements is definitely going to make your magical world feel more magical.
Okay, can I ask you a quick question, then we'll move on to the next tip. And I just want a yes or no answer. We're not going to elaborate on this further. And I'll answer at the same time. I'll count down for 3, 2, 1. And the question is, do you think we live in a dystopia? 3, 2, 1, yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's move on. Let's not explore that at all.
No, let's not explore that. So tip two is steal sci-fi.
Yeah, that is. Well, wait, is it to steal sci-fi? I want to do specifically dystopian magical dystopia.
Yeah,
that's my feeling.
Steal the dystopian vibes from sci-fi.
Beautiful. Okay, what do you got for me? What's the next question, my
So the adventurer for the next question is me. I want to know if you were living in a fantasy world in which magic was a thing.
Yep.
You said before, how would life look if you're a peasant?
Yes.
I want to think about how other parts of the world would be affected by magic. So, like, what does the economy look like in a magical setting? Like, how
in this economy?
Like, we talked about how it would affect the peasantry, but it would have an effect at every ring. So, like, what would commerce look like in a magical society?
Oh, okay. when you've asked this question, now I completely more understand where you're coming from talking about regulating and controlling magic users when we were talking about that first tip. Because if you can kind of fabricate and just make gold, the economy is founded on scarcity. That's what it wants. So magic is a way around scarcity, and not in any kind of measurable way. You know, it's not like only so much gold or so many resources or so much productivity can be created. It's like it scales exponentially, and that's exponential is like a rate of growth that's often described as magic, where it's, you know, exponential wizards doing damage and then linear fighters doing damage, and always the wizards overtake. In this sense, everyone's a fighter and the wizards are still wizards, right? Except now we're making widgets. All right. I think it would mess it up. It would have to be regulated.
Oh, yeah. I think that even just looking at the cantrips, there are so many things like mending, for example. Like repair just things as like a minute of work, you know, and it doesn't specify much other than is no larger than 1 foot in any dimension. So you could repair.
That messed up my peasant. That messed up my peasant earlier.
Yeah. You know, message and kind of sending spells would drastically change communication, which would mean that businesses could form around sending messages between kind of their magical workers in different locations.
Yeah. Hey, I've got something. I don't think you would have a monetary kind of currency. Like, I think it would have to be some kind of other currency where, like, it would have to be so regulated that it would be you are using credits now. Like because gold has intrinsic value because it's made of a scarce resource. They would have to have some kind of token currency where the physical currency is worthless. It's somehow non-replicatable, but magic will get around that. It'll replicate the currency. They'll just forge it. And the currencies work by being based on something tangible. So most of the world is based on a gold currency in our present day. So what would you base that magical currency off? There has to be a resource that you can say, this piece of paper is worth one of these rocks. You would need... Okay, because wizards could disrupt this whole economy. That's the problem. The tax department would have to be government wizards. That's the only way you can counteract it. Wizard versus wizard fight. Everybody knows that. This is crazy. And they would be like having detect magic. There'd be scanners to detect magic on currency. Like, is this fabricated?
If, like you say, gold doesn't work as your base unit for a currency in a world where you can just turn things to gold with Midas touch. So, and that would probably apply to most things with fabricate or clone or anything like that. So I would propose that eventually you end up at the point where your currency is either magic itself or it's souls. And your currency is soul coins. And you are
that's what you wanted. Okay, we went from 1 to 100 there real quick. Let's do the other one. What do you mean magic is the currency is magic in that it is a magical kind of currency? Or do you mean the currency itself is magic? I will give you so much magic.
In that you have some way of imbuing a mundane item with magical properties that democratizes magic. So you give people rocks that can hold a spell or hold an amount of magic, and that is your currency. And you go, right, okay, I want to buy this food. I'm going to give up my minor illusion rock for it. Or I'm going to get paid in a number of create food and water rocks for my job.
That's pretty fun, especially because there's so many choices about that, meaningful choices where it's like, I really want to buy this horse, but I did want to electrocute Jeff later.
You know, if I don't buy this horse and I keep walking to work for the next 2 years, maybe I'll just be able to afford to have a rock of fly or a rock of something else. And having kind of the spells and magic itself being the currency and working in that sense.
Just rocks. We latched onto rocks so hard that it's like, and at no point did anybody, like, marketing has not been invented. Should we call these something different? Definitely not.
Just
definitely
magic
not.
rocks.
Shut up, Jeff. I'll electrocute you again.
Because essentially, that is, if you think of the gold allegory, the gold economy works to continue the gold economy. You know, if you are a farmer, you're making food for other people to do other jobs, and those other jobs ultimately result in you mining more gold to create more money. And that money goes to people to ultimately create more gold. It's a self-perpetuating machine. So if magic is so widespread, then to me it would make sense that the currency is about furthering magic. So you spend magic to make more magic.
Yeah, got to spend magic to make magic.
Exactly.
Okay, that is very interesting. I think we are at the point of something, and we're going a little bit long, but that's okay. Here's a question about something that's maybe happened in your games. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had your players use magic to disrupt some kind of economy?
Yes.
Now, what did they do?
So they directly attacked a caravan carrying money. So there's a caravan with huge amounts of money that they attacked, and then that had a knock-on effect.
Okay. I was thinking more in terms of like
flooding the market with
currency.
Yeah. I mean, realistically speaking, if you have a high-level wizard that is able to create things and use their magics, adventuring is like the worst job for a high-level wizard, because you could just go and destabilize an entire nation's currency by flooding the market with the most valuable items.
I had one of my players was a druid, and he would transform into a very expensive horse, and then they would sell the horse, and then he would turn back into a druid and leave.
That is beautiful. That is incredible. I love that.
It's pretty mean. The old druid horse technique. We need a tip, and we need it immediately. What do you reckon?
I reckon the tip should be explore a magical economy, like where magic is the currency, because that's hella cool.
Yeah, magic rocks.
Explore magic rocks.
Explore magic rocks. Get your magic rocks off. Now, hey, that was really fun. I really like that we just carried the energy from our monarchy talk. We hit a point that we liked, and then we kind of carried it through. That's really fun because we just had so much energy after that. I was energized. Did you feel energized?
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Hey, do you reckon you could please recap those 3 tips for us?
I certainly can. So tip number 1 is to explore the inequality that's brought into the world through magic, both between magical and non-magical people, and also between the different magical classes. Tip number 2 is to steal things from dystopian sci-fi and make magical allegories for them. So take tech from sci-fi and give it magical equivalents. And then tip 3 is to explore a magic-based economy and just, get your magic rocks off.
Get your magic rocks off. Which cantrip would you want to know in real life?
Mage Hand, probably.
Oh, that's actually really good. Yeah, that's better than mine. I was going to say message.
Message would be really good, but Mage Hand, you're sitting on the couch. You don't want to go over to the counter to pull off a beverage. Just Mage Hand. You just force powers, man.
The good thing about Mage Hand is, as an Australian who works in kilograms, it would finally be a way for me to remember how much 10 kilos is. I mean, 10 pounds.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Why does it have LB in there? 9 of those letters are in the word pound. You dinguses. What are you doing? Learn to do stuff. All right. Anyway. Hey, my name is Matthew Perkins, and you can find my stuff over at matthewperkins.net.
And my name is Anto, and you can find my stuff at icarus-games.co.uk.
Now, the song that plays us out every single week, is called Altogether by a band called House Hats. This has been No Plan, No Problem. Don't forget to leave a something downstairs in the YouTube comments and leave those 5-star reviews. And we'll catch you next time.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.